This is the story of how my summer kind of imploded. And I think it's a pretty interesting story for you, not me, because it's kind of awful for me, but we'll get to that. So this summer was the end of my fourth year, and at the end of fourth year, you have to go on an elective. And this elective can be in almost anything. You could do it in something clinical, something non-clinical. You could do it in something like research, or you could do sort of like wellness stuff for yourself. There's a lot of things you can do. And I wanted to do something clinical, and because I want to go into surgery at the moment, I wanted to go on a surgical elective because that's something you need for future applications. So after trying to find some stuff and figure out how all of this works, I ended up getting a surgical elective in cardiothoracics through my university as a sort of exchange program, sister school type of thing, with one of the universities in Bangkok, Thailand. And that was going to last for about 4 weeks. Now, once I got this opportunity, I was pretty fortunate to get it through the university, which meant that I could get it for free. And I managed to get some government funding for electives, as well as an academic prize. So I had ended up getting this elective in another country for effectively free, which is really, really cool. And because everyone in fourth year has to go on an elective, I have a couple friends as well who are doing their electives in Southeast Asia. And we thought this would be an interesting opportunity to go traveling before our final year of university. So what I had planned out for this summer was 4 weeks of elective stuff in Thailand, and then a week of touristy stuff so I can see what this place has to offer, and then go traveling for a couple weeks. That was the plan. That did not happen. Here's what happened instead. Because I'd gotten a surgical elective, I'd gotten some emails about some like timetabling things, and I was told that I had to start my first introduction day at like 7 AM on a Monday. So I decided it would be smart to fly in a few days earlier so that I could kill the jet lag and then start on time and get into the swing of things fairly easily. Oh, and I should also mention, I planned to film all of this because I thought this would be a really interesting experience to film whilst at med school, and I had been filming stuff all up to this point. After about 24 hours of traveling, I was extremely tired. I managed to reach my hotel sometime in the morning, and then I fully crashed. I think I slept for about 13 or 14 hours. I desperately needed that because I felt ill from staying awake from so long, and I also only got like an hour of sleep on both planes. So I really didn't have any rest whatsoever. Now, when I woke up from my sleep, I got an email on my phone telling me that my results for the fourth year end of year exams had come out. The day that I landed was results day for the year. And I found out I didn't pass my OSCE. Let me briefly mention how my OSCE worked this year. We all had to sit an exam, and if you didn't pass that exam comfortably enough, they brought you back to sit another exam. And they don't tell you how well you did in the first exam, you just sort of have to do another exam and then hope that you would have done well enough to pass overall. So when I got my results and found out that I didn't pass, I looked at my results to see how I did, and in my first exam I didn't do great, and then in my second exam I did pretty damn well, but because of the way that things work in fourth year specifically, my results are averaged, and I ended up averaging just below a pass. I would like to go into a bit more detail about this, but I don't have a lot of specific numbers, and a lot of this is currently under review for stuff, so I can't go into it. I might do at a future point though. Anyway, let's talk about the consequences of not passing your OSCE. God. So, in 4th year, specifically, you're not allowed to resit your exams the same year. Or at all, actually. You're not allowed to resit your exams. Instead, you automatically resit the year, and you have to redo everything. All your placements, all of your skills, all of the lectures, assignments, tutorials, and all the other exams. So 4th year there are 2 exams. I passed my written knowledge exam comfortably. I have to redo that, and I have to redo my OSCE. Yeah, even talking about this and trying to explain it is still rough, which tells you how I'm feeling right now, but we'll get on to that. So yeah, because I didn't pass my OSCE, I now have to resit the entire year and just do it all again. Everything that I did last year now doesn't count towards anything, which is rough. Now that's a pretty big consequence, but it wasn't the most immediate one. You see, your elective in 4th year, after 4th year, is not a 4th year module, it's a 5th year module and mandatory for 5th year. But because I hadn't passed my OSCE, I technically wasn't a 5th year. I was still a 4th year, which meant that I could no longer go on my elective. I landed on a Friday, was due to start on a Monday, the following Monday, and I could no longer go on this elective. More consequences for not passing the OSCE is that all of the funding that I received for the elective, I could no longer receive, and the things that I've already received, I had to return. So I lost all of the funding I'd gotten for this period whilst I was in Thailand. Not only that, I also lost my health insurance and travel insurance because that was through the university and is dependent on you passing your written and your OSCE. I didn't do that and therefore had no travel insurance or health insurance or money. Yeah, the consequences aren't fantastic. It's not great. Also at this point, because I hadn't passed my OSCE and wasn't going into 5th year, it triggered a sort of academic process where I had to go to a lot of meetings with people. I had to email a bunch of supervisors and tutors for various different bits and send off more requests from people for specific things. It's all very tedious and admin heavy, but this process was triggered by me not passing. So to summarize, I had landed in Thailand. I had lost all of my funding. I lost my insurance. I had lost my elective, and I had no idea what I was doing anymore. All of these things happening to me led to a point where I had to decide whether I was going to stay in another country or go back home. And I had to try and evaluate what were the things that were going to make me stay or not. And that was possibly one of the bigger decisions I have made this year, because I had no return flight for about 2 months, because the holiday that I was planning on going to afterwards was when I was going to be returning from Southeast Asia back to England. So my return flight was not for ages. And I had already paid for this 2-week holiday around Asia, so I can't get any of that money back. But also, Was I willing to risk staying in another country without insurance, without funding, or at least as much funding as I had? And that's a big decision to make. More so, this academic process that was triggered, I basically had to have meetings with loads of people. But because I am now at a 6-7 hour time difference, trying to coordinate things with people back in England would be a lot more difficult because I would be ahead of them. And also because it was the holidays, not everyone was that easily contactable because they had all gone on holiday and taken leave, which was another thing I had to consider. And this process lasts weeks, so it wouldn't have been ideal to move around and travel back. But also, flying back at a last minute ticket at the height of summer would also not be cheap. And given the cost of living in Thailand is a lot cheaper, there was so much for me to try and think about and evaluate what was the best decision for me to do. Another factor that I forgot was like isolation. Because I had come on my elective, I was planning on going for 4 weeks, and a lot of other international students had also come to do similar programs, and the university in Thailand had tried to put us all together so that all the international students could meet each other and, you know, do their various different elective bits together. So I was supposed to be with a group of about 30 or 40 other international medical students, and because I'm no longer on the elective, I wasn't allowed to go there, and I had to consider the fact that I was going to be by myself for 5 weeks. I think that's given you a sort of rough idea of all the different factors that I had to consider. There's probably more, but given that I was also a complete mess when I found out, I also wasn't thinking straight. So there was that to consider in my decision-making process. In the end, I ended up deciding that I would stay in Thailand for however long I had planned and go on my holiday and back home afterwards, instead of flying back and being back home waiting to resit the year. That is what I decided. At this point, I now had 5 weeks in Thailand just to exist. Which, to be honest, on the face of it, is not that bad. I'm in a pretty good country. I'm in a capital city. Everything is much cheaper than it is in England. And I had to take this opportunity and basically run with it as much as I could, given everything in the situation. So, whilst I have been in Thailand, I have been making the most of it. I have done quite a lot of the touristy stuff. I have been to a lot of the different temples. I have tried all of the fun public transport. I have been to a bunch of massive shopping malls. Like, I didn't comprehend how big these places were and also why there were so many of them. I think I spent 7-8 days, each of them going to a different shopping center, and I spent like 3 or 4 hours in each of them because they're just massive. The best part about being in Thailand, however, is the food, because there's every single type of food you could possibly imagine here. Everything is super cheap, everything is fresh, and it's just delicious. Because 5 weeks in Bangkok is a really long time, I decided to go and spend a week in one of the smaller towns in Thailand called Chiang Mai, which is at the base of a massive mountain. I didn't really know what to do whilst I was there, so I just sort of did a bunch of random stuff, actually. I went to more temples, I went to some night markets. I think the best thing that I did there was I went on a hike for possibly the first time in my life. It was the first time I went on a hike because I decided to go on a hike myself. I almost died because I almost fell down one of the mountainsides, and I did run out of water, but it was fun. And at the end of the trail that I went on, I ended up at another temple, which had an amazing view of the entire town and surrounding region. So I think that was pretty worth it. Ooh, also I should mention, because I didn't have my elective funding anymore, I could no longer afford to stay in the place that I had planned to stay. So I had to hotel hop for 5 weeks. I think I ended up staying at 4 different hotels, 4 or 5 different hotels. Wasn't ideal, but was an interesting experience nonetheless, because I don't think I would have gone to certain places if I wasn't forced to move to different areas of the city. At this point, once all of my academic stuff was sort of dealt with and I could put it to one side, I think all of the emotions of what had happened over the last 3 weeks had sort of set in, and I was feeling pretty rubbish, to say the least. I think thinking about having to redo everything I had done the past year again for the sake of a very small margin didn't feel like it made sense in my head, and I was certainly depressed. Am certainly depressed. I forget I'm still living through this situation. It's not like something that happened a long time ago. It happened literally last month. At this point, I think it's safe to say the isolation had also settled in quite strongly. Spending all of my time by myself is not inherently a bad thing, but I think not having that sort of, like, not having people around is difficult when you're going through something like this and for such a long time. But I think I have dealt with that the best way I can, given the situation. In fact, in the beginning of 4th year, we had introduction lectures, and one of the points that was mentioned was isolation on placement, and how it can get fairly isolating, which, you know, did end up becoming very relevant to me for completely the wrong reasons. Oh God, I still can't believe it's happened. I still can't. I'm making this video at a point where I have dealt with a lot of the initial shock, but I haven't dealt with or started necessarily all of the things which have come in consequence. So it was rougher, it's still rough, and it's going to be rough. I think the academic stuff has hit me a lot worse than it would have done this year, because I was very aware that I had to resit an exam in 3rd year, and I wanted to avoid it at all costs. So I spent a lot of time studying this year. I cut back on a lot of extra stuff that I did so I could focus on academic stuff. And in fact, I stopped making videos because I really wanted to focus on exams and make sure I got everything down. So I didn't actually make anything for about 6 months. And I think not passing, after all of the things that I'd cut back on and the amount of preparation that I put myself through, and the severe consequences of what has to happen now, is possibly why it's one of the bigger shocks that I've had academically, and much bigger than something that I could have expected beforehand. Given that I was feeling rubbish for most of my time this summer, being in Thailand really did help. I think having perfectly warm weather, and good food, and being able to explore new places and experience new things, I think all of that has sort of cushioned the blow of what's happened to me academically and emotionally, which is why I think my entire Thailand experience has been very, very polarizing. On the one hand, it has been horrific. It has been one of the worst experiences of my life. I feel awful in myself. I feel awful about myself academically. I have not been this low in myself in a very long time. And then on the flip side, it has been one of the best experiences of my life. I have loved being here. I think it has opened up a different side of me, which I didn't necessarily not know, but I got to explore that part of me in this specific situation, which is something that I have quite enjoyed. Just being here, doing all of the things that I have done, all of the places that I've been to, all the things I've seen. I think that has been one of the best aspects of being here, and has ultimately made me think that deciding to stay here was the right decision. And I think that's sort of my Thailand experience summed up. It has been horrific and fantastic. So if I average it out, I think it's just been slightly below acceptable. Now that I've sort of explained the majority of my Thailand experience, I think it would be nice to focus on what I'm going to be doing going forward from this point. Academically, I will be focusing on resitting the year, which, to be honest, is not that deep because I have passed most of the year. I've done all my placements just fine, passed my written knowledge exam. It's just the OSCE that I need to worry about again. So it's not going to be that academically taxing. It will be emotionally taxing, redoing absolutely everything. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Ooh, I should also mention that whilst I have been in Thailand, I found out I got accepted into a scholarship program, which is actually pretty fun and pretty nice. I'm pretty happy about that. But given the academic shadow it had sort of presented itself in, it's a bit like finding an ice cream cone after being hit by an ice cream truck. So, you know, it's nice, but I don't think I can fully appreciate it yet until all of the bigger stuff has been fully dealt with. Oh God, I find it so ironic. As I'm filming this, I feel like I'm trying to explain everything as succinctly as I can, but I am like slowly deviating and tangenting into a minor breakdown on camera, which is probably true, but we'll get through it. And by we, I mean I, because you're watching this, obviously, weeks after I filmed it. More importantly, I still have a holiday to go on. And that is going to be fun because I think I have given myself enough time to deal with the shock of everything. And I think I feel well enough in myself that I am going to film all of my adventures going around Southeast Asia with my friends. And I think that'll be a really fun experience to end this catastrophic summer and try and redeem it a little bit. And I think that's everything. I've gone through all of my notes. I don't think I have anything more that I can add to this story at this point. I hope you've enjoyed hearing me explain what's happened. I hope it's been a good story. Thank you very much for watching. And I guess I will see you. Ooh, I think my next video is going to be from Vietnam. That's going to be fun.